Everyone excited? This is great. I had this whole shtick prepared. Like, you know when keynote speakers come up, like I'm supposed to hype the room up, and they're like, yay, tell me how excited you are, and everyone screams. And they're like, oh, come on, you can do better. But we already did that. But I still want to try, because I think this is a great joke, okay? Like, I spent weeks thinking about this joke, which is, everyone comes in and says, how excited to be here, and like, oh, come on, you can do better. But we're Flutter people, and we do it right the first time. Like, we're not gonna do it many times, we just do it right the first time. So everyone, really quick, are you excited to be here? Did it right the first time. Dash is very excited. This is me. I'm a product manager at Google. There's too many PMs, project managers and program managers. I've kind of done all of them, but my role is product manager. And I've been on the team since December 2013. And actually, I was doing Dart things before I joined Google, which is insane, like pre-Dart v1. So first, who's GDEs? Like, friends, like that, I was there beforehand, I was a GDE back when there was a Clojure compiler, or GDE, and a Google Web Toolkit, GDE. Like, that's how long I've been around. So I've been around before there was even Flutter, before Dart was even v1, before Dart even had a sound type system. So if you ever want to talk about the time where you could define a Dart variable and define it as type of dog, and then you could assign a cat to it, and there were literally people on the Dart team who thought that was a feature. And they're no longer with us, and that's fine. I'm pretty much KevMoo everywhere, to the point where my girlfriend made me a bracelet that says KevMoo, because as a joke. So you can, if you search for KevMoo, if it's not me, let me know, because I want to find them. Like, I'm trying to be KevMoo everywhere on the internet. And today we're here to talk about all things Flutter, right? Actually, the way I want to phrase today is I don't want to start talking about Flutter. I want to start talking about two things. First thing is technology that I find personally exciting. That's not AI. And then I'm going to talk about AI. Because it's 2025, you have to. But let's start with the technology that I find exciting that's not AI. So I'm really excited about these three things, especially lately. Linux has been cool for a very long time, but let's start with Linux. So Linus. 91 isn't that long ago. Who was alive in 91? Who was playing with computers in 91? Oh, my gray beards, and like, that's good. There's a few of us. Do you ever realize like you're old? Like I had interns this summer, and I was talking about landlines, and I had to like explain what a landline was. So I was just like, oh God, it's been too long. This year, Linux, over 6% desktop. Like my entire life, people were like, the year to Linux desktop. Like 6% is doing really, really well. Does anyone play with a Steam Deck? I have not bought one yet, but the idea of like gaming on Linux being a thing is just unprecedented. Again, things I've heard about for decades, and now it seems to be happening, which is super cool. There is a Windows subsystem for Linux on Windows. Like on a Windows machine, you can run Linux. So like it's supported by Microsoft. And I don't know if other people saw that this year. Apple is shipping container technology to run Linux like natively on Apple hardware, optimized for Apple Silicon, written in Swift. Like if you told me 20 years ago that Apple and Microsoft would be like proudly talking about their Linux support on their operating systems, I thought you were completely insane, but that's where we are. So Linux is super exciting. The next thing is WebAssembly. Anyone WebAssembly maximalists? I'm so excited about WebAssembly. This is even newer. 2015, 10 years ago, our friends at Mozilla, Luke Wagner, this other gentleman with beautiful long hair, they had this crazy idea, like, let's build, JavaScript was doing a pretty good job, but could we do better? And the idea of, portable, fast, and secure, which is kind of crazy, like to nail all three of those things in a framework, that was their goal. But if you look back, like announced 15, MVP 17, V1 only 6 years ago, and they just landed the V3 spec. And so the V3 spec has now solidified things like WASM-GC, which again, surprise, surprise, I'm very excited about WASM-GC. It's evolved so fast. I mean, this is the technology that lets us run Photoshop just in a web browser, and AutoCAD just in a web browser. It's mind-blowing. And even beyond that, like what I've been really surprised by and excited by is this push for WASM into the cloud. There was this famous quote, I forget who said it, it was one of the founders of Docker who said, if WebAssembly was around 10 years ago, we would never have had Docker, we would use WebAssembly. And so, like, I went to a WASM IO conference a few years, and the majority of the talks there were about WASM on the back end, not the front end. Like, I went and talked about cool Flutter web things on the front end, and I was a minority. Most of the talks were about like WebAssembly in the back end. So it's fascinating technology. If you haven't read into like the history of it, where it's going, again, Luke just does a great job. When I grow up, I hope to be as good a public speaker as Luke Wagner. He does the technical stuff so well. So if you want an introduction to kind of just why WebAssembly is interesting, YouTube this. And then the new stuff is this thing called the component model, which again is super exciting. And Luke has given many, many good talks. I highly recommend checking out Luke and the component model. So that's WebAssembly. And finally, RISC-V. Who's heard of RISC-V? Okay, so like, this is good. I'll teach you guys something. This is really exciting. Again, even newer technology. Oh, I guess not as new, newer than Linux. 15 years, started at Berkeley. This guy, David Patterson, was the professor in charge. He had a couple grad students. And the idea was creating an open ISA. So we've all heard of x64 and x86 and ARM. And they're like, well, what if we had this, but it was an open standard? So you didn't have to get a license from Intel. Actually, there's only one license from Intel and AMD. Like, there's only 2 companies, as far as I know, that can do the Intel chipset. Then ARM obviously charges a lot of money to use their IP. But anyone can implement a RISC-V chip. And so it's all over the world now. In fact, over 10 billion integrated circuits, which you guys haven't heard of this, like have been shipped that use RISC-V. In fact, companies like NVIDIA, like every time you buy an NVIDIA board, whether it's one of their crazy expensive AI boards or one of your desktop GPUs, they all have RISC-V chips in them. Because instead of having 1,000 different kinds of assembly language and 1,000 different compilers, they use RISC-V. Every Western digital hard drive for years now has RISC-V chips in it. They're all over. So these three technologies, I kind of follow as a fanboy. Obviously, I have my Mac laptop here, so I'm not running Linux yet. But just in terms of like fundamentally, like industry changing, like exciting to watch. Like I'm really excited by all 3 of these things. And you might wonder why. Why am I bringing this up? Well, first, it could be just because of Google, right? Like if you look across the board here, Google has been invested in Linux and WebAssembly and RISC-V. Native client on the WebAssembly side was something that Google pushed even before WebAssembly. Is kind of inspiring. Like, what if we had a really fast assembly language for the web? RISC-V, like the TPUs, you guys have heard of like Google's tensor processor units? Those are all RISC-V chips with a bunch of matrix multiply, like tagged on the end. And obviously on the Linux side, we do a whole bunch of stuff in the Linux world. So I could say I'm bringing these things up because I'm a good Googler and I would talk about all the good open things Google does. Yeah, but no, not really. What about the Flutter side? Like obviously across all of these things, like we run on Android, which is a Linux machine, thanks to work from our great friends at Canonical. Flutter has great support on Linux. Obviously we've done a bunch of work in WebAssembly, which I hope everyone's trying, and come talk to me if you have questions about WebAssembly and web and Flutter. And we've been running Dart on RISC-V for years now too. So I could be bringing up these great open things because of Flutter. Yeah, but no. So I initially thought I'd love these 3 things because they're all open. And then I thought a bit, and there's actually, I think it's 5 things that make these 3 technologies super exciting. 5 things. First, they're just fundamentally great technology. Like, it doesn't matter how open and extensible, whatever else you are, like, you have to start with just being great tech, like fundamentally good technology. Second, open, it really matters. And again, as someone who worked at Microsoft 20 years ago, where the idea of like open sourcing .NET was like literally laughed at. Like I heard conversations about like making fun of Xamarin and Mono. I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys are trying to open source things, ridiculous. Like I saw those conversations 20 years ago. Look who's laughing now. Like open wins, and it's a really exciting thing. Extensible, like you can't be, even if you're open in terms of like, free as in freedom or free as in speech, like unless you have an open platform that people can build upon and extend, like you're really not going to go very far, which gets into extensible, of course. You have to have an ecosystem. You have to have committed companies, committed individuals, committed institutions that are really investing in the success and like creating this positive loop. And finally, you have to be evolving. You have to be getting better. And so I think there's some kind of recipe here, and again, this is my own kind of speculation, some combination of great tech, plus open, plus extensible, plus a great ecosystem, and evolving gives you lasting impact. So noodle on that a second. We all want to be around a while, like invest in things that are around a while, and we can all point to technologies. Usually they're academic, and some of us like sneer and laugh, like technology has been talked about for 40 years that doesn't really have a lot of impact, but it's like academically interesting. So maybe that's some impact, right? But like big impact, like industry-changing impact. I know an impact is great. Like we love the idea of impact, but like not a shot in the dark. We don't want to be part of a movement or a philosophy or a set technology that's a big deal for 6 months, and then it turns into something else. Like that combination is really good, right? Like lasting impact. So let's ponder that in the concept of Flutter, or in the context of Flutter. So do I think it's great tech? I did not put a, that's a really bad screenshot, isn't it? My hair is longer. Bob and I gave this talk 6 years ago in the pre-times, talking about Dart being, and actually if I can read here, yeah, productive, multi-platform, and fast, pick 3. The point we were making then was, it's crazy that we can nail all 3, or at least we aspire to hit all 3. So I think fundamentally, Flutter is good technology. Like the people I've worked with for 10 years, I've been able to watch 10 years, and I get to blog about and write samples about. I'd love to claim I could take responsibilities for some of the great tech. I'm really standing on the shoulders of giants. But I do think we fundamentally have some good technology here. Like just at a computer science level, it's cool stuff. We do a good job of being open, I think. I looked at the latest numbers that were available. Like, to be in the top 10 of the most first-time contributors for a repo is amazing. Think about all the source code. Thank you. I agree. Think of the thousands, tens of thousands of repositories on GitHub, and we're number 6 for most first-time contributors. So that's aside from the fact of the great technology, right? Just like people contributing. I'm just super proud of this, and it's always great to see new people involved and pull requests coming through and seeing people contribute. It's just amazing. It makes me very happy. Extensible. So we've done a lot of work here recently, and we have some new stuff coming up. And I'm only going to tease some of these things now because I have other things to talk about. So if I bring up something here and you have questions, come talk to me. Making sure not only we have a good DevTools story around development, but we have plugins. Like, we want the dev experience to be pluggable. I'm super excited. Just this year, I think it's going to come out this fall, we now have web proxy support for Flutter Web. So you can like plug in your own dev server when you're doing a Flutter Web project on your local machine. So you can do Flutter run and configure a web proxy. So you can run your own development server locally and like have it all wired up. So this is a shout out to Salem and Sydney, our great interns this summer. I told you guys, I'd tell you at my keynote, they built proxy support. So again, like making it easy to bring your own development experience or your own backend and make it easy. Featherlight, I think, have you heard the announcement around Featherlight? We're moving Cupertino and material widgets out of the core framework and into packages so we can evolve those quickly and people can contribute more easily, which I think is super exciting. It's going to take us a while to slowly and thoughtfully do it, but I think it's going to be great for the ecosystem. We're working right now on a new analyzer plugin system, so you actually will be able to run multiple plugins with Analyzer, and it'll be fast and it'll be stable. Our Sam on my team is doing a bunch of work on Analyzer plugins, so keep an eye out here. I can give you bug links and things if you're curious about this, but we're really, again, caring about how we can make the platform extensible at every level. And finally, augmentations. I think people heard the announcement about macros. I'll touch about that in a second. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So there's actually a bunch of features related to macros around the ability to, people have done partial classes in C#, is the only example I can think of. But basically you can define a class across multiple files, like multiple part files. And so those using code builders that want to like define a constructor in a code builder and not have to use mix-ins or crazy like subclassing, like it's coming, we're working on it. It's called augmentations. So we're keep pushing this notion of making sure Flutter and Dart are extensible and people can plug in. Ecosystem. This is almost the easiest one, and it's just amazing being at a conference like this, right? Of course, packages. I think we're at over 60,000, and just it keeps growing. Thank you. Who's here publishes a package, makes packages? God bless you. Isn't it fun? It's so great. Like, just having an ecosystem where it's that easy to contribute. Folks like our GDEs. Who's GDE in the house? Doing all our great work. Woohoo! Thank you, GDEs. Conferences like this is not a Google conference. And you're all here, it's spectacular. These things just happen organically, it's amazing. And then of course, just all the companies that are not only building and shipping Flutter apps, but supporting the Flutter ecosystem. And obviously there's booths here today. We have an amazing ecosystem. And finally, on the evolution side, like I said before, there was a time where Dart did not have a sound type system. And if you want to geek out computer science with me, come find me. The stories here are really bananas and how we decided to make things sound, and the whole joke about changing, the jet engines while the plane is flying, completely bananas. And then we did it again with null safety. That was about as big a jump as adding null safety to the system. But again, pushing and evolving the language, even in difficult ways. And obviously there's been dozens of language changes since then, things that are coming up. Again, I'd always recommend looking at our language funnel. There's a repository. You can see what we're working on actively. Omitting the enums, we can just omit the name and just do the dot whatever, in switch statements. That's coming in November, and a bunch of other things. We just keep pushing things here. WebAssembly, adding a new compile target is not a trivial task. Holy cow. But we did it in the last couple of years, and now it's working great. The performance is spectacular, and people are shipping code with it all over the place. Impeller was a big thing. We started being based on this rendering engine from Chrome, Skia, and we rewrote the engine. And I was telling someone last night, actually, if you search for WIMP in our issue repository, you'll see references to Web Impeller, which is being actively worked on. I have no dates or promises there, but it's coming to the web as well, which is super cool. And finally, macros. And I do have a line through this, but I wanted to make a point. And I was sad when the announcement came through. I had the conversation that we were stopping working on macros. I think this is a feature, and I want everyone to think about this a second. We want to be pushing just at the edge of maximal impact. And that means we're not going to bat 1,000. To use a baseball analogy, does that land with everyone when I say bat 1,000? I didn't play baseball. We're not going to be 100% when we make our big bets. Hopefully we're 80%, 90% for our big bets. But I hope people in the ecosystem can give us some forgiveness and actually think in terms of how we're thinking about evolving our framework, our language, our tooling, which is we want to make big, impactful bets. And part of that is we're not going to hit every time. We're not going to nail it every time. But the promise we'll give you is two things. One is we'll keep pushing to make our language better and our framework better, and we'll push hard. And the second thing is we're not going to ship stuff where the juice is not worth the squeeze. We are not going to ship stuff that ruins the fundamentals that we all love about Dart and Flutter around the performance, the developer experience, the scalability. And so this was a hard call, but I hope you see that we did it for all the right reasons. And I like the fact that we're staying right on that edge of doing things that are maximally impactful. So I'm sad about macros, and we're doing augmentations. We've done a bunch of work to improve the build system. We're doing a bunch of work to try to make this story better, right on the edge of what makes sense. So the 5 things, right? I think we're doing a good job, right? Yeah? I think so. I think we're doing an okay job. The question is does Flutter deserve to be on this list? I would bet those top 3 things, we'll be talking about them in 10 years, probably 20 years. I'd like to think, right? Does Flutter deserve to be on that list of these kind of, fundamentally industry-changing, long-lasting, impactful things? That's kind of the hypothesis, the question. And maybe a better question is, how can the people in this room, obviously there's a few of us from the Flutter team. I hope you come find us and talk to us. We're obviously working hard. But again, back to kind of that ecosystem point and other things, what are people in this room who are invested in Flutter, who care about it, maybe as a technology, whatever, what can you do, or what should you be doing to make sure that Flutter has lasting impact, right? And not just because it's cool technology, I think it's cool technology, not just because we like our jobs, and don't want to start over, that's good, but because we think we have something really special here, right? The community, the ecosystem, I think it's really special, and I want to make sure it sticks around a while, right? So what can we do? Well, I'm going to come back to that. And because this is not a Google conference, I can just put this slide up and not have to ask a lawyer. It's great. So as I promised, I talked about 3 techs that weren't AI, and now we have to talk about AI. But I get my sticker because it's a conference in 2025, and I'm talking about AI. So tell my boss, is he here? Michael, are you here? He said he was coming. Okay, maybe he's not. I still want my sticker because I'm talking about AI. First, have you guys tried it for development? It's so cool. Like, oh my God, AI is so fun. There were two things I wanted to build this year. The first one is weird. Like, you might be able to figure out the source code if you go play with it. Go play with it and come find me and I'll help you. But you know, like the whole like nodes and springs graph line connection thing? I've written it like a dozen times in like a dozen frameworks, and I wanted it in Flutter to like visualize dependencies between nodes and like the compilation stuff. And I just wanted this thing. And so I was like, this seems like the kind of silliness it's just asked Gemini to go build for me. And it did, and it ran the first time. It had a bunch of bugs in it, and it was really inefficient, and I had to fix how the layout update and the draw update listener callback thing, like I had to do a lot of massaging, but it got me started. Like I was really amazed, like how quickly it just bootstrapped to like nodes and springs just running. I mean, the second thing, this confidence interval thing, do you guys ever do the thing where you change code and you're like, is this better? And so like you run it on your machine, and maybe you use the time command because you're a fancy Unix person, and you run it before and you run it after, and the numbers are a little bit different, and you're like, does that mean it's better? And maybe you run it 5 times on each one, you're like, okay, I think like it's better. So like, there has to be good math. There has to be good math on this. Like this has to be a solved problem, and it is. It's called like there's this whole thing called confidence intervals, and there's this table you look up things and you run it so many times and it gives you a range. And I've always wanted to have this code. Like I just wanted it, and I didn't know how to write it. So I was like, hey Gemini, like write me up a thing that does this, and it did. And I had to like reformat it and change some stuff and how it did it, and it wrote tests for me. It was amazing. So I vibe coded these like 2 things this summer, and it was spectacular. It's like, this AI stuff is like, it's cool. So if you haven't tried it, like try it. I highly recommend. And secondly, and again, because you know it's my job to kind of pitch things, like we're doing a bunch of work on the Flutter team to do just cool stuff with AI. And it's, you know, again, it's kind of table stakes today. You know, there are more than a few of, you know, the powers that be at Google who like everyone to like, okay, everyone sprinkle a little bit of AI and everything. And so we have, and it's actually really cool stuff. So if you haven't checked it out yet, flutter.dev/AI, like we have a bunch of stuff there. Like, so if you want to build your Flutter app and use AI tools to build your Flutter app, we got you. There's a bunch of cool stuff there. And then if you want to add AI bits to your app, we got you there. Like we have the Gemini APIs, and Firebase has a bunch of cool APIs. Like we're doing all the MCP stuff. We've done a bunch of work to integrate with that. So you can just like, hey, like upgrade packages and it'll like run code in your machine, which seems slightly terrifying, but it's also really cool. You know, we plug in with the Gemini CLI. And then this final thing is brand new. The ability to actually use AI to generate UI. So this is called Gen UI is something we're working on a lot. And we're just starting to experiment here. But the idea of like, in the context of your app, like chat is great. We've all seen the chat experience, right? With AI and stuff. No, like what if the chat experience is actually generating widgets and like interactive bits as you go? And so this is this concept of Gen UI, and we're doing work here. So like, take a look, it's really cool. So finally, after, you know, you should try it, and Flutter's doing stuff here, is the hype. I'm gonna take a sip before I get into the hype. So warning, this is at least an American yield sign, but hopefully it translates to everyone else. Like, these are some personal opinions. Again, this is great. No lawyers reviewed my slides before here, so I should at least clarify this is my personal opinion. I would say, well, first, who has at least a little bit of anxiety about AI in our world? Just in general. Oh, most of the hands are going up. Good, you're all smart. I think we should be a little at least concerned and paying attention. At least it's not crypto. Remember when crypto was gonna be the big thing? Like, oh, I'll take AI. This actually seems useful. Again, lawyers didn't review my talk. And the 3 crypto bros in the room are like, buy my coin. So I think there's some things, you know, I don't know what's true, but I'm pretty sure I know it's BS. So anyone who says AI is just a fad, yeah, I don't buy it. It's more than a fad. Like, it's gonna be around. This Gen AI stuff, it's really cool, and I think it has real power. But those that say it's the only thing that matters, I think that's also BS. Like, there's a lot of really important engineering that's happening that's not gonna be done by AI. Maybe help with AI, but like, I don't think it's everything. Anyone who says that your job, especially your job exactly how you've done it for years or decades for some of us with gray beards, anyone who says that you can just keep doing the job the way you've been doing it, I think that's a lie. Like there's always this joke, which is, I don't know if AI will replace an engineer, but the idea that an engineer who's really good at using AI is probably going to get the job over someone who doesn't know how to use the AI and do those efficient things. I think that's probably true. And again, I'm not a lawyer and I don't represent any of Google's big AI products, but I think that's the thing. But anyone who says like your job, especially as a developer, is like in immediate mortal danger, I don't think that's necessarily true either. Like I think the truth is somewhere in the middle here. But I think it's probably good to hedge your bets. And you might ask, is this an AI-generated image of a hedgehog in front of a hedge? Yes, it is. Again, AI is really cool. And he's so adorable. I want this on a t-shirt, actually. So hedge your bets. And again, that might be an American phrase, but like, how do we find some safety here? How do we make sure, let's be cautious. What can we do? So again, this is my opinion, thought, suggestion. This is not, there are no promises here. But I think the way we can hedge our bets in this world of AI is two things. We can either go deep and or go broad. Now, what do I mean by that? When I say go deep, I mean go deep technically. How can we improve our development skills, go deeper in the stack, build fundamentally new things, fundamentally better things, not just repeating stuff? I think this is a place where AI will have trouble following. And I have more to say about this later. Go deep technically. And the other one is go broad. And when I say go broad, I mean collaboratively. And this actually means with other human beings. How we collaborate, how we talk, how we build, how we compromise, how we build up. Go broad collaboratively. Now, before I get into those two things, I want to merge my threads. So let's do a git merge on my talk. So I have these two kind of concepts, right? First is, how can we think about Flutter's lasting impact? How do we make sure that this thing that we all love and we're traveling to Berlin to meet with people for a week and risk getting COVID or who knows? I got my shot. Anyone else get their shot? Just be careful. Like we care about this. We're willing to travel and come see about it. Like let's make sure it lasts. So what can we do there? And at the same time, how can we hedge, some of this uncertainty we have about AI? And I think, honestly, it's the same answer, which is we go deep and we go broad, personally, okay? Go deep technically, or deeper technically, and how do we go broad collaboratively? Let's talk about those. So deep technically. I told you, I had this like graph bouncing node thing. I vibe coded. And I did this whole the statistical thing with the comparing values. It was so fast and it worked really good right away. I had to do some tweaks. Why was it so easy? Why was it so successful? These are solved problems. How many pieces of code do you think there are on the internet of people doing nodes and springs? Hundreds, thousands, right? And I know on the statistical thing with there's these tables, and I forget the terms already, but there's these crazy big tables with n values or p values. It's like statistics. But I went Googling, there are thousands and thousands of sites that talk through how you do this analysis and how you look up the p values. These are solved problems. And AI is really good at taking, here's a solved problem, and a different language that I kind of know, I can make it work. AI is great at that, right? They get synthesizing. They're really good at this. I know what a hedge is. I know what a hedgehog is. I know what a graphic style is, But could you imagine me saying, hey, Gemini, rewrite Flutter's graphic engine. Please write me a Dart WebAssembly compiler. Please design a meta programming system for Dart. And by the way, that doesn't destroy the runtime performance and scales out to arbitrarily large projects. That's just the add-on, right? These are not things you could just ask Gemini or ChatGPT or anything. Just deep, deep problems. So what does this mean for you all? So, oops, did I miss one? No, yeah, that's good. Think about where you are now technically in terms of how you contribute to the Flutter ecosystem, the things you build yourself. And I think the question you ask is, how can I go one level deeper? What's one level beyond where I am right now? Have you been sitting in a comfort zone in terms of the type of code you've been writing for months or quarters or years already? How can I push myself just one level deeper in the stack, one level more complicated? What's one area where you can push your comfort zone? And again, anyone who's learned anything, whether it's dancing or snowboarding or music, we always have this notion, right? You play you take piano lessons and you play the piece, and then you get to the part where it gets hard. And so instead of pushing through the part that's hard, you just go back and play the beginning that you know really well. For those, how do you push yourself into that area where you're not familiar, you're not comfortable? I think that's a really important question I think we should all be asking ourselves. So maybe for some people, that's just filing an issue. If you run into a problem, instead of just screaming on social media about Flutter is broken and why don't they fix anything? Did you file an issue? And if you're already filing issues, did you do the work to file the issue with a really nice clean reproduction, a tiny reproduction, and not just this failed? Maybe that's where you are, just a little bit. Maybe you've figured out how to change the Flutter framework locally on your machine and run it. Take your favorite widget and make it do something weird, in the Flutter framework, and then run an app and see the weird behavior. I have now changed Flutter. Maybe that's where you are. Try that, one step further. Maybe you try to build the Flutter engine locally, which again, this is running native compilers, C++, other things. Maybe that's the next step. Can I build the engine? Just one step lower. Maybe you write a lint. We have a whole model for how you write lints for the analyzer. You could write your own and see if it plugs in. Maybe it does something really silly. Maybe you don't want, I don't want classes with the letter Z. Classes just should not have the letter Z. It's a bad thing to have in a class. No classes with Z. Write that lint, see if it works. That'd be fun. Maybe try tweaking some other aspect of the analyzer, which sounds like a gnarly problem, right? And it involves if you want to use it in Flutter too, that means you need to build Dart and then get that build part of Dart into your Flutter build and try it out. That's a hard problem, but maybe that's where you are. Maybe you try to run and compile the Dart SDK locally. Maybe that's a thing. What's the next, just a little bit deeper, a little bit more complicated. Now, of course, I need to offer a caveat. We, at least on our team, we can't help you with that. I would love to take Slava, who's the TL for Dart, and have him sit down with me and walk through how to build the Dart SDK and make a tweak to the Dart SDK. I've written C++ in over 20 years. I would love to get his time. He's too busy. He will not take my call. So I'm not saying we won't help at all. We can help a little bit with some of these things. But if you want to get technical on this stuff, you might have to figure it out yourself. But maybe you don't have to do it alone, which kind of gets to the other part about going broad collaboratively. I'm going to get some more water. So what do I mean by going broad collaboratively? Who are you meeting with regularly? Are you talking to people in the Flutter ecosystem? Are you going to meetups? Are you just sitting by yourself and streaming into the social media void? Maybe you're filing issues and yelling at the Flutter team, but how many people in the Flutter ecosystem do you know? Hopefully some, right? I hope you have a friend. And if you're meeting with people, who are you brainstorming with about what could be, what you're building, what you're excited to build, what they're building, what they're excited to build, how they could do it differently? And if you're brainstorming, who are you working with? And obviously some of us, I'm guessing, have coworkers that work in Flutter. That's great, work with your coworkers. But even outside of work, are you working with someone on a package or a plugin or a proposal? Who are you actually collaborating with to build things? And then what are you building together? Have you made those connections? Not just going to a meetup and oh, hi, and eat some pizza and listen to the talk and go home, but have you met people that you're actually building things with and collaborating with? Remember these three gentlemen? I picked these technologies and then I was oh, there are people behind them. And of course they end up just being three dudes. But then I started thinking a layer deeper. This is Sage. Now a they. was a she a long time. She worked on the USB 3 support for the kernel, the Linux kernel, and was an outspoken advocate for the idea of having, a code of conduct and making sure that you fight for inclusivity in the kernel. They were awarded the, I think it was the first Red Hat Open Source Community Award for women, for the efforts to improve the communication and making sure women were involved in open source. Again, expanding the notion of just it's not just about hacking, right? But who's the community? How are we making sure we're including people? Luke did great work on WebAssembly. This is Bailey. She's the CTO at Cosmotic. She's actually great. I met her a couple times. She's amazing. She is the co-chair for the WASI subgroup in the W3C. So actually doing work to make the component model a real thing in the standards body. And she also is the director of the steering committee at the Bytecode Alliance. Again, doing a bunch of work to make sure that WebAssembly expands, and this whole thing of the component model is amazing. Talk to me about that. This is Callista Redmond. She was the CEO at RISC-V. Now, she was actually just went to NVIDIA, but she was there for 6 years. Surprise, surprise, there were some politicians in the US, I'll let you guess, who didn't like the idea that there'd be a free and open ISA not controlled by an American company. That bothered them. And so she basically led the effort to move the RISC-V consortium from Delaware to Sweden to make sure it stayed neutral. And then something I thought was cool, and hopefully the Europeans in the room, she worked hard on the European Process Initiative, which is the idea that Europe should have their own processor technology and maybe not have technology that's completely owned by American companies. Says the American. I think it's kind of important. So again, these three gentlemen at the top, brilliant self-starter, starting this brilliant technology. How far did they go by themselves? And who are the people that made it broad, made the communities bigger, made it work really well, right? It's more than just being a lone hacker with a good idea. I think that's really important. And guess what? Large language models can't do that work either, right? LLMs are not doing this work. I can't say, hey, Gemini, build me a community, build me a foundation, build me an ecosystem. That's the work we have to do. So this is my crazy idea. There's other ideas, but this is it. There's this notion of SIGs in I think IEEE, special interest groups. What is the special interest group that doesn't exist around Flutter that could exist? Entertainment, embedded, auto, education, health, industrial, government, nonprofit. We have several companies in each one of these things. Where is the special interest group of people, again, not started by people on my team, we're limited, we're working really hard in what we're already doing. You do not need my permission or anyone on the Flutter team's permission to go create a group that is focused on one of these areas for Flutter. What are the packages we need? What are the technologies we need? How can I, instead of just one individual throwing an issue over the fence, where's the group of 20 companies that collectively have 1 million or 10 million customers? They're hey, we need these 3 things to go make healthcare work with Flutter, or make education work with Flutter, or embedded work with Flutter. And it's not just one person complaining on social media, but it's a group of 10 companies or 15 companies. Here's all the things we need. We need these 3 things. I'm happy to take your emails and your social media posts. If I got the document undersigned by the CEOs or the directors of 5 or 10 companies, that gets, I can forward that to my director and say, we need to be working on X, we need to be working on Y, look at what they need. That's all stuff you guys could do here. You don't need my permission to collaborate that way, right? This is a great example. I see some familiar faces. This is not done by folks I don't think, not one Googler there. Looking at building and how to use AI. Completely community driven. This is one example. Simon's right here, so go find Simon. I think, is everyone here? Esra's here. Okay, there's a few here, yeah. Go talk to these folks. They did not get permission from the Flutter team to go do this work. So, question. How many people here know they have a competitor in the room? At least one. There should be more than a few. Okay. I'm guessing there's more than 2, but you know you have a competitor in the room. Are you guys talking? And not just like politely. Like, are you talking regularly? I think it's actually a really good thing to ponder. Because it's not only about the size of your individual piece of the pie, right? Like your little thing you're working on. It's like, how do you make the pie bigger? Yes, this is an AI-generated picture of big pie. I think it did a pretty good job. Like, we like to talk, I think, at least 1 million. I've heard maybe 2 million. I know we're well over 1 million developers. I think the last time I saw them, there's 50 million developers in the world. And AI is going to increase the number of developers probably quite a bit. But it's people that are just going to be learning, right? Like, we have so much room to grow this pie. And our team at Google has been very stable, the size-wise, for quite a long time, and we're doing lots of important work. We're not going to double the size of the Flutter team. Like, I hope we keep growing a bit, and I think we will. But the way we grow this pie, grow this ecosystem, grow this world, is with all of you. So, lasting impact. I'd love to think that Flutter would be on this list of things that just have staying power. Not only impactful in the industry, but impactful in the industry for a long time. So you can say, I was there at the beginning, right? How do we do that? And this AI wave is at least worth a little concern. A lot of excitement. I think it's worth the excitement, but I think it's also worth the concern for more than just our jobs, but especially for our careers. And so how do we ride that wave and make sure that we're riding it and not getting run over by it? I think we do it by going broad. I think we do it by going deep. And I think we do it by going together. Thank you.